welcome and good morning. It's hard to follow after this time. We have the commissioner, the presentations yesterday and the day before, but I will do my best to raise to the bar, to the occasion. As Charlene said, my name is Ricardo Franco. I am the director of Family Support Services in the Massachusetts Adoption Resource Exchange, and I have been working in MARE since 2010. And also, besides my background in faith-based and in ministry, I am an ordained pastor. I came to this job, to this calling really, after spending 20 years in faith-based communities in Central America and South America here. So I combine my experience with multicultural communities with my experience as a social worker. Since I didn't have a background in social work, but the fact that I was working so many years under the supervision of a licensed social worker, and because I have a master's degree in another field, but I was able to get my license as a social worker. So I'm feel part of social work has been in my heart from the beginning, even though my training was for ministry and for theology and religion. So I went and also get a doctoral degree at the U.S. School of Theology in personality, culture, and religion. So I am also part of the faculty at the U.S. School of Theology. It's my pleasure to be here sharing with you what I learned and so preparing families for transracial adoption. A little bit about MARE. We are the Massachusetts Adoption Resource Exchange. We have the same name that the Michigan Adoption Resource Exchange. So when you type MARE, you could be any of the two exchanges. The difference between an exchange and full services agency is that we don't really provide direct services to families or children. Most of our work has been helping and supporting the Department of Children and Families in their efforts to recruit families and to bring awareness about the need of these children to find permanency. So we have been doing this work for more than 60 years now, and we have a unique role in working with families and with the adoption community, whether it is children, social workers, agencies in the state. We are a private nonprofit organization, and we have a contract with the CF to support these efforts. And over the past 2 years, we have been kind of refocusing our efforts to our finding, supporting, and matching families with the children who wait longer before finding permanency. And these kids are children of color, older youth, siblings, children with complex medical, developmental, or cognitive needs, and children who identify as LGBTQ. So a little bit about what we do and the importance of having not just the information, the connections, but also the opportunity to impact statewide with families and agencies and social workers. So I feel really privileged to be part of this fellowship because I can have our voice and the voice of the communities and the voice of children of color heard in the adoption community in Massachusetts. A little bit about why I interracial adoption. As you can see, this theme of transracial adoption has captured my imagination, my mind from the very beginning when I started working in MARE, because really data shows that it's easily to say that 40% of all the adoptions, when you put together domestic infant adoption, private or domestic from foster care, plus international adoption, 40% of all adoptions are transracial. And when you think about all the adoptions that have occurred in the States in the last 20 years, almost 250,000 of people have been adopted. So this is like a wow, this is a huge number of families and kids being formed through adoption. What are the implications of this? And then when I think about, for instance, when we heard about Amy, when Amy from Florida said that 40% of the solutions were transracial adoptions, and when we know that at least 78% of all transracial adoptions in the United States are a white parents adopting a child of color. So that raised the question of what's going on. Yeah, the numbers are telling a story, but what's that story, and what are the things that we need to learn from that story? Then when we moved to Massachusetts, it's accurate to say that at least 28% of the children, in nationwide, 28% of the children who were adopted as transracial adoption. And then when we moved to Massachusetts, there is the same kind of proportion, 25%. So it's safe to say that at least one in every four kids who are adopted in Massachusetts are placed in a family of a different racial ethnic background. So I am a member of a, no, I'm going to correct my slides here, it's not a minority group, but I'm a member of the Black and Brown community. And I know because of my own experience, having raised two daughters who have to learn how to navigate spaces in which they are not the majority as Latinx children. Uh, and know the struggles for them to assert their own identity. I always wonder how could these children who are placed in families who look different than themselves, how do they feel? And one adoptee, April Dinwoody, put it this way: it's an experience of being overexposed but no seen. And that experience, that description, I always wonder how these kids feel. How could they feel? And I also think of the families who, with a really sincere and open heart, they want to adopt us racially. How aware are they of the implications of what they are doing? Are they aware of the issues of systemic race, class, gender disparity underlying the public narrative about adoption as a successful equation in which all parties win? Are they aware of how complicated that narrative is and how different reality is? So that's what moved me to go deeper into this uh, ARP. So these are the questions that I start pondering at the beginning of my project. Questions about the training the families received before they were placed, questions about the training the families are receiving today in Massachusetts, questions about the voices of adoptees themselves. I found that most of the voices were from adoptive families or from professionals, but not really a lot of voices from adoptees themselves. Also about questions about the resources. What are the resources there? Are they available for families? Are they easy to find? Are they easy to digest for families? And also my question about what is the academic community saying? What are the clinicians saying about this? So those were the kind of like initial questions for me to start this project. And then the famous PICO. I lived with this PICO for many, many weeks trying to say, oh, what's going to be my PICO? So because PICO is so important, I want to just read it and just allow you to stay with me a little bit about this. If families who are waiting for a transracial placement have been matched with a child of a different race or are currently parenting a child of a different race, participate in a self-assessment of the readiness and competency for racially aware parenting. If they are equipped with resources and receive training and information regarding evidence-based strategies for parenting transracially that are appropriate to their stage in the adoption continuum, will it result in a better preparation as they will be able to explore their intentions, assumptions about transracial adoption? Will they increase their competence to support the children's journey towards healthy racial identity? And will they develop a set of skills transferable to specific parenting practices? So, in order to try to resolve or to find answers to those questions raised by the PICO, I did these six things. I conduct the review of literature. I survey families who have experienced, families who adopted transracially several years ago, 2, 3 years, 15 years ago, and the experience they have. So I conducted that survey, and then I create this readiness inventory tool. Then I develop a training curriculum. I deliver the training, and then I evaluate the feedback from families. So the first part was the review of the literature there, and I review resources available through specialized websites like the Child Welfare Gateway, Adopt US Kids, the North American Council on Adoptable Children, NACAC, National Council for Adoption, NCFA, the Center for Adoption and Support and Education, CASE, the National Center on Adoption and Permanency, NCAP, the NAA, the National Adoption Association resources. They have a lot of information. I review some academic articles and doctoral theses, books written by adoptees, adoptive families, book by adoption professionals. And so at the end, I came to the conclusion that there are too much information there. For families, it's overwhelming. Where do we start? So I came to the conclusion that it would be useful to have a framework, a structure to organize all that information so that it will be made easily for families to access. And working in this, I came across the work of M. Elizabeth Volk on cultural competencies. She is a professor at the University of Georgia, and she uses a framework that really resonates with my approach to this, and I will tell you more about her work later. And also, of course, I found that the voice of adoptees is underrepresented. We need to hear more and more. So I came across different biographies of people who have been adopted, people of color who has been adopted transracially. And so I also did some review of those books. So first thing, the survey. So this was an electronic survey sent to 20 families with a rate of 90% response. And we asked questions in two main topics: the training they received, the training, how they evaluate the training, the resources they were provided, the resources they are accessing today after the adoption, the issues of race in their family and the dynamics they are experiencing and how they assess those after being placed in a transracial adoption, and of course the connection they have with the child, racial, ethnic, cultural group. So a little bit of the demographics of the 18 people who responded the survey. So as you can see, different constellations are represented here, different family constellations, and of course, some of them were biracial and single females. There were no single males in this sample, but this is the configuration of this. So these are the children they adopted. So in total, these 18 families adopted more than 39 because some of them adopted also children of the same race, white Caucasian children. So, but in total, 39 of these children adopted were children of color. And as you can see, the different ages in which the children were adopted and the gender of those children. So just that slide make you think, oh, what an impact 18 families can have in many children. So this is another important data. So when I start asking them about the training. So in Massachusetts, we have what is called the MAP training, which is the Massachusetts approach to partnership in parenting. So I asked them, how do you feel? How do you evaluate, assess the preparation you received when you were taking training? Interesting, only one family, or 5%, felt that the MAP training prepared them well. Most families say somewhat, and some families say better little prepared. So I knew right there we need better preparation for them. A little bit of the quotes. I want to just pause here and let you read what families said. So from these quotes, I learned at least three things. Number one, the reality is complex. It's more complex than theory. Knowledge is something, but reality practice is something else. And also things change as people, as children uh, become older. So they need to continue this growing. Second, I think it was important, learn that it was important to give families next steps, calls to action, ways of implementation. And the third thing that I learned is the topic deserves its own specific training. MAP training is a 30 hours curriculum, and transracial issues are just one of the many, many things they explore, so they need more. I also ask families to select, in their opinion, after have been through the whole process and being placed and being a transracial parent for many years, what were the most important areas they consider we should train families who want to do this, and look at the resources there. The majority of 13 families believe that the most important thing in training is racial and cultural awareness in both the parents themselves and the extended family. And the next category was also related to issues of racism. However, I was surprised that less than half of the families, only 8, consider the understanding of stages and processes of racial identity formation as key. And for that reason, only 5 families value the importance of demographics of neighborhood, school, and the need for what Kevin Hoffman, one adoptee, calls cultural surrogates, adults who mirror the child's racial ethnic identity and who can play an important role as models and cultural guides for the children. So even though they say, yeah, race is really important, issues of race are really important, when it comes to, are you aware of the importance of role models and diversity in the neighborhood, and giving the children the opportunity, the context to learn those cues and how to navigate their own communities, they feel like a more hesitant about it. So I learned that families will need to accept and recognize with humility that they cannot model for their adopted children how to deal with issues of racism and race and the feelings associated with it, because they have not experienced them and perhaps never will, but that they can open intentional spaces for these children to learn from other people of color who will function as cultural guides and surrogates. I also asked them the most challenging aspects of parenting a child of a different race, and the answers were pretty much consistent with the issues of what I was suspecting. This was really good. It's, what things do you wish you had known before the placement? So this is how I was thinking. I'm going to share, want to be placed with a child so they know what other families wish they had known before. As you can read these quotes, I will give you a time to read these. So from these quotes I learned awareness is important, resources are key, having intentional spaces and conversations about race with the kids is important, and connections with traditions, other families, other adoptive of colors, connections, awareness, resources, intentional spaces for conversation. So after 6 months collecting data, I concluded that I need to do 3 things. I need to create this inventory. I need to develop this training, this curriculum, and I need to compile a list of the best resources available there for families. Webinar, podcasts, TED Talks, videos, articles, blogs, magazines, books. What's the best things? At least to have a basics. So I created the inventory. So this inventory is an exploration, and this is important. I want to share here with you, with the support of Bridget Chirutini, who is my supervisor, and she's here today, and one experienced a transracial adoptive family in our staff. I developed this inventory. This inventory provides families the opportunity to assess their level of readiness for transracial adoption. I use the metaphor of transracial adoption as a journey through an unknown and challenging terrain, and inviting them to consider if they were on green, yellow, or red at this particular time in the journey. In the inventory, participants were presented with information about the realities and challenges of racial parenting, were invited to explore their feelings and beliefs around issues of race in adoption, were asked about their knowledge of resources available, and were encouraged to explore their openness to make significant changes, adjustments in order to parenting a child of a different race and ethnicity. And this is a little bit of a sample of the way they have to complete the inventory. So they were presented with a topic, and they were given these options in the four categories of information, feelings, and also resources and openness. So they had to choose in each one of those categories of different topics what what color do you feel you are in right now. For instance, I ask you, do you know that white parents have privileges associated with them, and that these privileges are not transferable to their adopted children? Are you aware of that? Do you know that information? How do you feel about that? So they had to choose something. Also, do you know that there are resources for you to learn more how to navigate that reality? And then how open are you to maybe considering, maybe I need to move to a more diverse neighborhood? So those were the kind of topics they explore. So they fill the inventory, the 20 topics, and so they were able to assess their readiness to do this. A little bit of the resources, the results about the inventory. Pretty much, they were open. Most families were open to make adjustments and to learn more. And many of them really let me know that they didn't know where to find resources. They lack resources, and they need to know more specific tools. And also, they feel that they need more preparation. So, with those resources, I came to use the tool that I mentioned about these competencies for transracial parenting, the work of Elizabeth Bonk from University of Georgia. And I create these kind of definitions of these three competencies that are important for these families to parent a child of a different race. So I'm not going to read this, but pretty much is you have to be aware of the issues of race, the very fact that you are a white family considering to be placed with a child of color tells a story of inequality, of disproportionality, of lack of resources. How do you think that the child is going to think about you? What do you think they're going to say? Oh, I'm so grateful. Finally, I'm so lucky that this white family is taking me. This is not the story. So you need to be aware about this. Unless you are planning, intentional planning to be engaged and to create spaces and cultural and physical spaces for you and your child to grow as a member of a brown and black community, things are not going to change just because you are so aware of issues of race. Because you visit a ethnic restaurant once a month, or you celebrate this cultural holiday, you have to be more intentional than that. And you have to know what are the skills, and specifically what are the skills that the brown and black community has developed, because the skills are there, but you need to expose your child to these uh, communities so that they know how to navigate the systems, because these kids are, it's not a matter of if they experience racism, is when and how prepared they are and how prepared you are. So with all that, we put in place the trainings. July 14, the first training, then 2 weeks for families to explore resources, that we provide resources, and then the second session. So this was the flyer we used, and we put it in place. So 20 families registered for the training, 18 families, 18 individuals complete the inventory, 16 individuals participate in the training, 16 families, 8 families who attend to both, and 2 families attend only to one session. And at the end, 10 post-training services were completed. So this is what happened. So let me just go now and see a little bit of the results of those. Okay, so this was really encouraging that they were satisfied with the results, uh, very satisfied and satisfied. So 90%, and only one family was neutral. Okay, this one is really important because it tells us how useful they think the different components of the curriculum were. The components were like the inventory was the first thing they have to take. Then they participate in the first session. Then they participate in the second session. And in between, they explore a list of resources. So 90% of them say that the resources were useful or very useful. 90% of them say that completing the inventory was useful or very useful. 70% of the participants said that the second session was really useful, and 60% said that the first section was really useful. In the first session, we just present the frameworks, racial awareness, multicultural planning, and survival skill. In the second sessions, we just review together all the resources, the things we learned, and next steps and practical steps for them to continue. So really good response. Okay, I also asked them, how do you rank the impact of these different components of the training? And what is revealing here is that for many people, for the majority of people, the impact on feelings and beliefs, and that's what I wanted. I want them to pause and think, how do I feel? How do I believe about this? Why am I considering transracial adoption? How do I feel about the families of color? How do I feel about the child being in the foster care system, and why I'm doing this, and what are my internal feelings of this? So that's really impactful. And also, if you see the last set of data, the resistance to make changes. And that's good. I want them to know that they are resistant to make changes, because this is going to happen. They will need to make changes and adjustments. And if they are not prepared for that, then maybe this is not what it is for them. And this one, so after the whole process, it's important to know how much 70% of families feel much more informed and better prepared. And another family said, this training confirmed my decision to pursue adoption. And then there were 2 comments I want to share with you. One family said that after listening to all the things, especially from experienced families, I don't know if this is the right path for me. And that's fine. We want families asking these questions before they are placed with a child of a different race. So lessons that I learned: more specific training is needed, for sure. The big challenge is to connect with this racial, ethnic, and cultural community of the child. White parents especially tend to see this connection with the experience of children of color as something negative about their parenting capacity, and do not look for help in the communities of color. That was the main thing for me. I say, hey, there's nothing wrong. You cannot know, you cannot feel the same. You need help, you need support in the community of the child. The misconception that parents usually think that things like hair, skin care, ethnic food, or cultural celebration suffice for children to have healthy racial identity formation, overlooking the importance of role models, peer socialization, and learning cultural cues of their communities. And also, prospective adoptive families need to locate as much resources as possible and build support networks with other transracial adoptive families before they take a placement, and then the placement take all the energy and time. And also children need to connect with other transracial adopted children. During the training, several families expressed their hesitance about racial adoption, and I was positively surprised with the openness to learn about the implications of racial adoption. Uh, Families also thank the resources we provide, and in general, they were very receptive of the training. So we want to keep developing a plan to offer the training more to other families in the process through the state, and also sharing the resources and the inventory with the adoption development units in the Department of Children and Families in Massachusetts and the contracted agencies we work with. So that will be a tool that they can use in the future. And also offering the training to families who are already placed or families who are considering adoption in the faith-based community with which we have some connections in our agency. Okay, the impact, as I say at the beginning, my own experience made me think about the feelings and the realities of being a person of color and in a space in which we are uh, so many times overlooked but no seen. So this project allowed me to identify and to name a need in the system. Also, through the courses, the webinar, the individual coaching meetings, and the support from Arlene and Charlene and my mentor, I was able to articulate a well-informed strategy to address the need that I identify. The plan, do, study, act model is something that I can keep using in my work as a professional in the field. I also feel that I have a new set of tools available that are applicable in my social work practice. Finally, the individual development plan helped me to identify areas of growth and in my leadership in which I need to develop